Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Yes, welcome back.
To Occult Archives.
That's right.
The corner of the show.
Yeah.
Where we peel back the layers of history's most feared and mysterious books.
Absolutely.
Exploring the myths and legends that surround them.
That's right.
And forget those dusty cliches.
Yeah.
We're here to really look at what's inside.
Yeah, to examine what truly lies within these pages.
Beyond just the sensational tales of forbidden knowledge.
Absolutely. And often there's some really profound ideas that resonated with people throughout history.
Right.
And our aim is to really kind of uncover those enduring concepts.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's really valuable for our listeners.
Yeah.
Always trying to learn more and expand their understanding.
Fit in their understanding.
Without getting bogged down.
Yeah.
So think of this as your shortcut.
That's right.
Today we're looking at episode 273.
Wow, 273.
We're diving into a text that promised nothing less than forbidden laws of the spirit.
Okay.
Hidden powers of the soul.
Interesting.
And the esoteric science of the East.
All right.
14 lessons in Oriental Occultism.
Okay.
It first appeared in 1904 under the name Yogi Ramacharaka.
Yogi Ramacharaka.
Who we now know was William Walker Atkinson.
Right.
An interesting figure.
Yes, he was a key figure in the New Thought movement.
Right.
And his interest in Eastern philosophy clearly informed this work.
Absolutely.
And you can see it in his writing here.
Yeah. He presented these ideas in a way that I think was trying to be accessible to a Western audience.
Right.
So the book originally titled 14 Lessons in Yogi Philosophy and Oriental Occultism.
Okay.
Recently re-released by Global Gray as an ebook in 2024.
Okay.
And they have some pretty wild AI-generated cover art.
Oh, really?
Which you can check out on their website.
Oh, cool.
Yes.
I'd have to do that.
But our mission today is to extract the core principles laid out in these initial lessons.
Okay.
So think of this as building that solid foundation of the yogi philosophy as Atkinson presented it.
Sounds good.
So essentially we're distilling the essence of these early teachings.
Yes.
We're giving you the fundamental building blocks
right.
of this system of thought.
Yes.
Okay, so let's unpack this, starting right at the beginning.
Okay.
With lesson 1, Atkinson directly addresses the students of the yogi class of 1904.
1904, so we're stepping back in time.
Right. It's like a correspondence course on spiritual development.
Right.
What I thought was interesting was his ambition for these lessons.
Okay.
Comparing them to seeds planted in fertile soil.
Okay.
With the expectation that they would gradually take root and grow in the student's understanding.
Yeah, that analogy of seeds I think is quite insightful.
Yeah.
It suggests that these aren't concepts that are meant to be just grasped intellectually overnight, but rather ideas that are going to deepen and unfold over time through reflection and personal experience.
Right.
It speaks to a very patient and long-term approach to learning.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
And he really emphasizes this psychic connection, a harmonious sympathy between the teacher and student as vital.
Right.
For truly understanding the spirit of the teaching. Something that goes beyond just the words on the page.
Right.
So I'm curious, from your perspective, how much does that connection with a teacher influence your own learning?
Oh, that's a really interesting question.
Yeah.
I think what's really fascinating here is this idea of a direct mental or even spiritual transmission of knowledge. Yeah. It's a very different model of education than, say, the more detached, purely academic approaches that we see in the West.
Yeah.
It implies a much deeper level of engagement and receptivity on the part of the student.
Absolutely. And that leads us right into the Eastern teaching style.
Okay.
He describes it as authoritative without a constant need for proof or debate.
Right.
The teacher imparts the knowledge as received, trusting that those who are ready will intuitively recognize its truth.
Right.
So no lengthy philosophical arguments here.
Interesting. So this approach really relies heavily on the student's inner resonance with the material.
Right.
It suggests that truth isn't always arrived at through logical deduction alone, but it can also be a matter of intuitive recognition.
Right.
And I'm curious, how does that idea sit with you?
I think it's so different.
Especially in a world that often prioritizes empirical evidence.
Yeah, that we need that proof. We need that evidence.
Yeah.
But this idea that that initial understanding is just the planting of that seed, right? And then full comprehension blossoms later through personal experience.
Yeah.
It takes the pressure off.
Absolutely.
Of feeling like, I need to grasp this all right now.
Exactly. It suggests a journey of unfolding understanding over time.
I love that.
Yeah.
But it's important to note that this isn't blind faith.
Right.
The Eastern teacher, as described, encourages confidence in the guidance initially, but ultimately expects the student to prove these truths for themselves through their own experiments and experiences.
Yeah, I like that.
And he uses this powerful analogy.
Okay.
The teacher is merely a pointer out of the way.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, it's a key distinction.
Yeah.
The teacher provides the direction, the map, if you will.
Right.
But the student, you have to walk the path.
Yes.
And verify the landmarks.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's such a good way to put it.
And I think this blend of guidance and personal validation avoids both rigid dogma and outright skepticism.
Yes.
So it kind of threads that needle.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting.
All right.
Lesson 1 introduces this concept of the sevenfold human being.
The sevenfold human being.
With the spirit as the authentic self encased within these various layers or sheaths.
Okay.
And he outlines these 7 principles.
Okay.
Providing English terms for the Sanskrit.
All right.
So we have spiritual mind, intellect, instinctive mind.
Okay.
Prana, or vital force. Astral body.
Yeah.
And physical body.
Okay, so quite a comprehensive model of human existence.
Yeah, so it's a hierarchical framework.
Right.
Starting with the most refined and essential aspect, the spirit, and then moving towards the denser, more material aspects of our being.
Yeah.
And I think understanding this layered view is so crucial for navigating the rest of the teachings in this book.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, for you, as you consider your own being, how do these different potential layers resonate with you?
That's interesting because I think we often think of ourselves as this kind of unified whole. Right. But to really break it down into these different components, I think can be very insightful.
Yeah, and to start to see how those different components interact with each other, influence each other. So let's start with what he calls the lower principles.
Okay.
The ones we might perceive as more immediate.
Right.
First, the physical body.
The physical body.
He emphasizes that while it is the most apparent, it shouldn't be dismissed.
Right.
It's the temple of the living spirit, and which requires careful attention and training, which he links to Hatha Yoga.
Right.
That mental discipline over the physical form.
Yeah.
But then he introduces this idea
that
our cells contain miniature lives.
Oh, wow.
Or sparks of intelligent mind. Which I thought was fascinating.
That's really interesting. It's noteworthy here, I think. The respect for the physical body, despite its position as the lowest principle. It's not seen as an obstacle to spiritual growth, but it's seen as an essential instrument, a place where the spirit resides.
Yeah, and the idea of cellular intelligence, while maybe not aligned with current scientific understanding in the same way, still points to this holistic view of the body as an active and responsive system.
Absolutely. And I think that early mention of Hatha Yoga highlights the importance of physical discipline in this philosophy.
Absolutely.
So it's not all just about the mind.
Right, exactly.
There's a physical component as well.
It's all connected.
Yes, very much so.
Then we have the astral body, described as a finer form of matter, a vehicle for the soul that is eventually shed. He mentions its disintegration after death and its potential visibility to psychics as violet light. But this is fascinating. He hints at the idea that the ego leaves the physical body in the astral body during sleep.
Oh, interesting.
Suggesting this deeper exploration of consciousness and altered states. That comes later in the lessons. So for you, does this resonate with any experiences?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
I mean, the concept of an astral body is something that is prevalent in many esoteric traditions. It's almost like an intermediary realm between the physical and the more subtle spiritual dimensions.
Right.
The idea of it being discarded at the proper time, I think, suggests a natural progression of the soul's journey, and that connection to dreams certainly sparks curiosity.
Oh, yeah.
About the nature of consciousness beyond our waking state.
And then we have prana, or vital force.
Prana.
He defines it as a universal energy.
Okay.
The life force that animates all living things. But importantly, he clarifies that it's not the ego itself. It's a form of energy that the ego utilizes.
Right.
Okay, so it's not you.
It's a tool.
Yeah. It's a tool. It's a force.
Yeah.
But it's not you.
Interesting.
And he explains that prana dissipates after physical death, returning to this universal reservoir.
Okay.
But, get this, he connects prana to concepts like magnetic healing.
Right.
Mental healing, absent treatment.
Wow.
And even personal magnetism.
Okay.
Suggesting we can increase and direct prana through our will and thought.
Interesting.
Referencing his other work, Science of Breath.
Okay.
So I'm curious for you.
Yeah.
This idea of a universal life force that can be consciously directed. What implications does that have for how you think about health and well-being?
I mean, this idea of prana is such a foundational concept in yogic philosophy. This idea that this universal energy underlies all life processes and can be consciously harnessed, I think has huge implications for how we understand health, vitality.
Even our potential to influence our own well-being. And perhaps that of others. And the connection to various forms of energy healing. Really underscores the practical applications that this concept was believed to have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so shifting our focus now. Okay. Goes down. Lesson 2 moves us towards the higher principles.
Right.
The ones that constitute the thinking part of our being.
Okay.
So we have instinctive mind, intellect, and spiritual mind, with spirit remaining that ultimate principle. And he acknowledges that the Western terminology isn't a perfect match for the Sanskrit terms, but opts for clarity, which I think is really helpful for us as we navigate these ideas.
Absolutely.
And this transition is so important because having established the more tangible aspects of our being, now Atkinson is delving into the realm of consciousness and mental activity.
And I think his acknowledging the limitations of language is really interesting. It highlights the challenge of translating these subtle spiritual concepts into everyday terms.
Absolutely. I mean, how do you truly describe some of these things that are so beyond our normal experience?
Yeah. And he then introduces this idea of 3 planes of mentation.
3 planes of mentation.
Instinctive mind, intellect, and spiritual mind. Emphasizing that these aren't rigidly separate, but rather interconnected. Almost like different facets of the same underlying mental energy. So think of it as one mind operating on 3 different levels. Or 3 distinct modes.
Okay, that's helpful.
Yeah.
The concept of multiple levels of mental functioning is a recurring theme, I think, in various psychological and philosophical systems. But what Atkinson's model does is it gives us a very structured way to understand these different ways in which we process information, make decisions, and experience reality. So it really encourages you to consider these different layers of your own mental activity, not just thinking that it's all just happening on one level, but seeing the interplay between these different levels of the mind.
Absolutely. So let's start with the instinctive mind. He describes it as the most basic level of mentation, something we share with the animal kingdom. It's largely subconscious, and it governs our fundamental life functions. And our ingrained habits. It's essentially our automatic pilot.
That's a great way to put it. It's the realm of innate behaviors, automatic responses, and those core drives that ensure our survival. So it operates largely beneath the surface of our conscious awareness, yet it significantly shapes our actions and our reactions.
And just think about how many things you do every day on autopilot.
Absolutely.
It's
driving to work. Brushing your teeth.
All those little things.
All those things that we don't even have to think about.
That's the instinctive mind.
That's the instinctive mind at work.
And then moving upwards, we encounter the intellect.
The intellect.
This is that next higher plane. The domain of reason, logic, and conscious thought. And he emphasizes its development as a pivotal step in human evolution. The faculty that truly distinguishes us through our capacity for conscious reasoning. However, he also cautions that while powerful, Intellect is not the highest principle.
Right.
And we should avoid the trap of intellectual arrogance.
That's so important because I think we often, in the West especially, really kind of elevate the intellect as the be-all and end-all.
The pinnacle.
Yeah, the pinnacle of human achievement.
Yeah.
But what Atkinson is saying here is that while it's indispensable for analysis, for problem solving, for navigating the complexities of the world, it is a tool.
Yeah.
But it is not the ultimate source of wisdom.
It's not the end.
Exactly.
It's a means to an end.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that warning against intellectual pride, I think really highlights the potential for our rational mind to become a barrier.
To other forms of knowing.
To other forms of knowing, exactly.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
And then he introduces this occult doctrine, which is the awakening of I consciousness. That moment we become truly self-aware marks the real dawning of the soul's conscious existence and the beginning of its journey towards spiritual maturity. So it's the birth of the ego in its conscious form.
Interesting.
Yeah, and that awakening of self-consciousness is such a fundamental concept.
It is.
In so many spiritual traditions.
Yeah, in many spiritual traditions.
It signifies the development of a distinct individual identity. And the capacity for self-reflection, which is seen as essential for further spiritual growth and self-understanding.
And it prompts us to really consider what it means to be aware of ourselves, to be a self-conscious being.
As a being, But then he delivers this really important lesson. Simply having an awakened intellect doesn't automatically make you a better person. He argues that intellect can be used to rationalize and satisfy our baser desires, potentially leading to a more refined form of bestiality than animals.
Than animals who just act purely on instinct.
Who are purely governed by instinct. Right. And there are consequences for this misuse of our higher faculties, with the soul eventually needing to retrace its steps.
Yeah.
I think this raises such a compelling point.
It does.
How often do we see intellectual ability used for less than noble purposes?
Oh, all the time.
Right.
I mean, history is full of examples of people who are brilliant, but use their brilliance for
ill
purposes.
Yeah, and I think that
it's a profound and I think somewhat sobering observation that intellect without a corresponding development of ethics and spiritual awareness can be a very dangerous instrument. Atkinson suggests that the conscious choice to indulge in these negative behaviors, armed with this intellectual cunning, carries a greater karmic weight.
Yeah, almost like it's a heavier burden.
Right, because you're choosing.
Because you know better.
You know better, exactly.
Right.
Whereas an animal is simply acting.
It's just following its
nature.
Its nature.
Right.
Well, in lesson 3, we transition to the spiritual principles.
Oh, okay. The spiritual principles.
He briefly reminds us of the instinctive mind and the intellect, acknowledging that general level of intellectual development in the human race.
Yeah.
But then he underscores how challenging it is for most of us to even comprehend the still higher spiritual principles, employing vivid analogies of blindness and deafness to illustrate this limitation in our current state of awareness.
I like those analogies. They really convey this idea that understanding these higher spiritual concepts requires a certain degree of inner development, a capacity to perceive beyond our ordinary senses and intellect.
Right, like if you were trying to explain color to someone who's never seen it.
Right. Or music to someone who's never heard it.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible.
It's outside of their
frame of reference.
Their frame of reference.
Exactly.
So he introduces the spiritual mind as the 6th principle, sometimes referred to as the superconscious mind. And while most of us haven't fully awakened this spiritual consciousness, he suggests we experience glimpses of it through higher thoughts, inspirations, and that sense of spiritual longing, that inner yearning.
That hunger for more light.
For something more.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And he emphasizes that all that is good, noble, and truly great emanates from the spiritual mind.
So this is the source of our highest ideals, our intuitive grasp of goodness and truth.
Yeah, where do you see that?
I mean, I think it's those moments when you feel a sense of inspiration or creativity or you have an insight that seems to come from beyond your normal thinking process.
Yeah, it's like it's downloaded.
It's like it's downloaded.
From somewhere.
Yeah. And that, I think, is a taste.
A glimpse.
A glimpse of the spiritual mind.
Yeah, and this directly connects to the love of God and neighbor.
Okay.
He says, as the spiritual mind unfolds within us, we develop a more profound sense of a supreme power.
Right.
And a genuine feeling of human brotherhood, which he contrasts with the more detached and analytical reasoning of the intellect.
So it's moving from the head to the heart.
Yeah, it's a shift from intellectual assent
right.
to heartfelt experiential understanding.
Exactly. It's going from simply understanding the idea of interconnectedness to actually feeling it on a deeper level.
Feeling it in your bones.
Yes, and the emphasis on love and brotherhood as natural outgrowths of spiritual development really underscores the ethical dimension.
It's not just about
the philosophy.
It's not just about levitating or reading minds.
Exactly.
It's about this deeper...
It's about becoming a better person.
Yeah. Being a better human being.
Absolutely.
He also describes this inner conflict we often experience between the desires of our lower instinctive mind and the higher impulses from the spiritual mind. All within the realm of our consciousness, the intellect.
Right.
He touches on those historical interpretations of this struggle as a battle between the devil and an angel.
Right. The angel on one shoulder, the devil on the other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the occult understanding is that each part is simply acting according to its inherent nature and tendencies.
So it's not a battle between good and evil. It's more like this natural tension arising from these different levels of our own being, each with its own set of drives and aspirations. So it encourages us to really observe these inner dynamics without judgment, without getting too caught up in this idea of good versus evil.
It's just this.
It's just what is.
It's what is. And then this is a fascinating point.
Okay.
He identifies the spiritual mind as the wellspring of inspiration for artists, writers, seers, and prophets. He posits that what we often attribute to external sources.
Divine inspiration, the muse.
The muse,
right.
Might actually be the voice of our own higher self speaking through the spiritual mind.
So that's a very empowering idea for creative individuals because it suggests that that profound creativity and insight are not external gifts bestowed upon a select few, but rather emerge from tapping into our own deepest spiritual resources. So it really puts the power in the hands of the individual to cultivate these abilities.
Absolutely. And he explains that by actively cultivating our spiritual consciousness, we can forge a stronger connection with this higher aspect of ourselves and gain access to knowledge that transcends the limitations of purely intellectual comprehension.
So we're moving beyond just the rational mind into this realm of direct knowing.
Direct knowing. And he even mentions the potential for advanced psychic abilities.
Okay.
But with the caveat that these abilities truly manifest when we've transcended selfish desires and aligned ourselves with higher principles.
So it's not about using these